Yeah, in terms of next year, obviously we set the bar fairly high this year. It was a decent league campaign, albeit unsuccessful at the end. But also the Tailteann Cup, as you said, didn't get to Croke Park, but the nature of the performance, and I suppose the fact that it was just penalties that stopped us from achieving that target, there was a really good feel good factor around the whole football environment in the county for weeks after that game. Um, how do we get that back again in the early stages of the season, and what's the targets for 2023?
Well, the targets, the team will set their own targets, really, the players. And I think when you're in Division Four, there's only one target, really, isn't there? There's and that's it. It's but let's not dress it up. There's some really, really good teams in Division Four, and I know that sounds peculiar. Like last year, for example, if you were given whatever amount of money and you were saying, okay, you need to bet on two teams to get out of Division Four, you'd have bet on the two teams that got out. So they were there through unusual circumstances, through 2 years of COVID. The leagues were a bit unbalanced. And like we bet Tip, but then Tip won 5 games on the bounce to get promoted. So to win 5 games on the bounce, you're actually a good team. You're probably too good to be in that division. So they proved that they needed to get out, and they did. This year it's much more balanced Division 4, I would suggest. But Wicklow have the potential to be a really good side. Laois have the potential to be a really good side. You look at the Sligos of this world, really, like, look what they did against Cavan up in Croke Park. Potential to be a really good side. Ourselves, we would put ourselves up there. You have the Wexfords, you have the Londons, the Carlows, the Waterfords, all with potential there. So it's a really tricky division. People think Division 4, you go down there, it's easy. You've seen it enough, Breifne. It's a really, really tough ask. There's teams there that shouldn't be in it, that should be up another notch, and them guys are all fighting out. But as I always said last year, there's huge pressure on them guys then to get out, and we're trying to put that pressure on and try to get to the top of that division if we can. With the Connacht Championship then, and this is, but you see our side of the division, each one of those four teams, New York, Leitrim, Sligo and London, are all looking at the potential of getting to a Connacht final. And nobody will be taking them games for granted. You've seen what happened to us in London last year, where we thought we had the game won, and then all of a sudden it was back to a point game before Ryan puts it in the net. And when we boarded the plane to leave London that night, Sligo were in real trouble in New York on the other side of the Atlantic. So it's that's a really tough side of the province for us. But we're looking at New York, and that's it when it comes to championship. So our first round, the league, is the most important thing for us, and then we'll deal with New York when we get to the end of that.
The whole New York trip becomes almost a kind of a carnival for a couple of days in Yonkers or across the Bronx, and it just becomes kind of a Leitrim enclave for maybe 3 or 4 days over that long weekend. How much of that sideshow of kind of families and friends and community and GA members and fans being excited about going for the trip filters into the squad, and you've been there as a player, now as a manager it's slightly different. You're trying to dampen expectations, dampen kind of the sideshow. How much of that has already crept in, if anything?
Not amongst the players, and like our job, particularly the likes of Mike Solon, who's brilliant at this stuff, his job is really to keep that out of the players' reams. His job is to kind of organise kind of everything to that regard. We did it brilliantly last year when we went to London, and hopefully we'll do it as well going to New York. I was in New York 2 weekends ago doing a recce and meeting some of the great fan base we have in New York, and so right from our hotel to how we're going to prepare, where we're going to train, how it's going to be, like the boys will have plenty of time after the game. The game is going to be on a Saturday evening. It's going to be different. So you'll have which is very unusual for the players, you'll have a Saturday and Sunday night there. So there'll have plenty of time after the game. It's not the rush that it was, Breifne, back in 2018 for Leitrim, or for Mayo in 2019, where you're basically rushing, you have a couple of hours with your friends and family. You have that time there after the game. So I don't think it's going to be as much of a panic for players, but I do think the carnival atmosphere, the amount of Leitrim people that are in New York is literally insane. Like, it's like, I'm coming from Mayo and being a small bit ignorant to the amount of Leitrim diaspora there is in New York was the biggest shock that I had when I went over in February, and again 2 weeks ago when we were over there. It's amazing. Like, you walk down McLean Avenue, and I'm walking down, and this guy just starts shouting at me from a butcher shop. guy called Oliver Charles, and he's originally from Leitrim, you know. And like this guy with a half Leitrim, half New York accent shouting at me to come back for a photo, you know. So it's that mad over there. It's and you've seen it, and I'm getting the pleasure to kind of see it now. So you have to keep the players away from it. Our hotel, everything we choose tries to keep the players away from it. But after the game, the players do know this year that there is going to be that extra day there, so they have a bit more time to liaise with their families and friends and people that they mightn't have seen for a couple of years.